All right, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I have here, if you're watching, you don't have to see this, but I'm just letting you know that there is something to see other than just me talking if you watch the YouTube. I have here something that I would have never, ever wanted anyone else to see, let alone the entire world, on a freaking public platform on video. This is a stack of notebooks, and it is what I refer to as my Bibles. And I'm going to tell you exactly what this is and how you can make your own Bible and incorporate this into your life, and why it is so personal and once so embarrassing and awful for me to share this with the world in one time. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what these look like. And I am going to share what's inside of them, but I want to talk about them first, but I want to give you a visual of how much of this I have here. And this is for the last, I think, 10 years. There's not all of them, but I've had notebooks spanning way back to high school times. I always use them, and I'm going to get into that. I just want to show you this. Okay. All right. So the Bible terminology, I know that it might sound a little bit too religious for some people and maybe bring up some feelings and emotions that are not preferable. So you don't have to refer to these as your Bibles, but I just call them this because if you think about it, if you've seen those books that are called the Cooking Bible or the Grammar Bible, right? It's just like an authority guide on something. So these Bibles are an authority guide on me. And I highly suggest that you create your own authority guide for yourself, whatever you want to call it. So yes, they are journals in a way, but they are specifically meant to uplift and support and grow myself into my coolest self, my true self. You can have this done on the computer. You can talk into your voice recorder on your phone to record your thoughts. You can have videos of yourself. If you're a visual person and you want to look back at these videos, you can do it however you prefer. But I think there's something special about having it physically with you. Something you can hold in your hand, something you can flip through and visually see your own words, your own interests, your own stuff reflected back in your own eyes. And the reason for this is because when we are partner pleasing, we are so used to being super extra in how much we focus on other people, and how much we're listening to other people, and how much we're letting other people influence us and their voices be in our ears. It is hard, even when we tell ourselves, okay, I want to focus more on me. I'm going to try to listen to myself. It is so hard to stay in that focused place when we're so used to being so extra about hyper-focusing on everyone else. So when we have these, this is when you can open it up and look at your own words, your own pictures and things that you post in here and be like, oh yeah, that's what I told myself I like. This is how I wanted to think. This is how I was feeling earlier when I was feeling more into myself. These are our way of being extra so we can balance ourselves out and give ourselves a chance here. Because we know how it feels to be like, all right, I feel like I'm going to just focus on me. I'm going to prioritize myself. And then your partner comes home, you see your partner, they are here in your vision. And all of a sudden you feel like you forgot everything that you just worked on, right? Because it's so powerful to have this person who is presently in front of you, talking to you, interacting with you. It is such a powerful force that we forget. And so having these books with you, you can have a chance to look back and open it up and remind yourself, oh yeah, this is my own voice. This is my own influence on myself. So I'm just going to have a little sip of tea here. If you're looking, you can see this cup. Look how cute this is. This is a lovebird ripeness chart cup. Because my youngest sister gave me this many Christmases ago because we grew up with lovebirds. And it's like a fruit getting ripe. So cute. Okay, so what is inside of these Bibles? What makes them so special? What makes them different from just a diary or a journal where you write, "Dear diary, here's what I did today"? Okay, so for these, you put quotes and pictures and your own writing and your own progress and things that you find, things that interest you, everything that is uniquely you, that makes sense to you, that has to do with you and getting clearer and more focused and honing in on who you want to be and what you like and what interests you and what feels more like you, you put it in here so you can have yourself visualized. And so in here, I have printouts from interviews with people at whom at the time I found inspiring because they were being their true self. And I was like, I kind of want to be more like how they're being their true self. So I would put printouts of that in there. I even have a little fortune cookie thing in here that says, everything will soon come your way. I have some inspiration here about a few rules that I want to try to live by. It says, stop buying unnecessary things. Okay, so back then I was letting go of stuff and learning to be a little bit more sort of minimalist and sort of more of what I liked in my own closet and my own life, figuring out what I liked. So even stuff that I printed out, any pictures that was like, oh, this is me. This is what I feel like my soul is drawn to. I wrote underneath it, be excited about something every day. Let go of past expectations, experiences, personas. This is now. Okay, so a lot of just reminders for myself. If you enjoy my daily reminders on Instagram, it is like that. You can write down certain quotes or passages that make you feel a certain way, that make you feel like, okay, yes, this is what I want to move towards more of. So put it in a place where you can come back to it and feel inspired and get back in the mindset whenever you feel yourself slipping. Okay? And it's good to wake up and see this first thing in the morning because you know what it's like. You're in a haze. You're just thinking about what's going to happen in the day. You're thinking about your partner. You're thinking about all the things that our brains normally go to when we wake up. But then you open your Bible or whatever you want to call it, and you say, oh yeah, this is what I'm focusing on. This is who I'm becoming. This is my true self. So that is the energy behind it. It's kind of like the teenager energy where you have the wall in your room that's plastered with the band posters and movie posters and cool stuff from magazines. Or if you put it on your school books, right? Like this kind of energy where you just put all the stuff you like as a collage. You're just like in your own little world that you're creating this cool collage, this collection of stuff that you like, that represents you, that is your own self-expression. And we lose this as we grow up and we become adults and we become so focused on, okay, who do I need to be for everybody else? We lose that magical feeling of just being in our own little world, in our own thoughts, dreaming about our own futures, fantasizing about our next cooler selves, focused on all the stuff that we find interesting, putting things in our view that inspire us, writing down things that celebrate our own progress. Because that's another thing you can do is when you start to do something small for yourself, stuff that nobody else would understand, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I went out and wore this jacket today that I always wanted to wear, but I was always too preoccupied with what everyone else would think. You can write down in your little notebook, oh my gosh, today I went out and wore my jacket and I felt like myself, even though it felt a little scary, I did it. And you put the date on it. And it's just cool to celebrate and share these things with ourselves, because if not, we're going to forget. We're going to just go out there and say, oh yeah, I did it. And then move on because other things are presenting themselves in our lives that demand our attention. And we forget about how cool it was and what a big moment that was for ourselves. And we have to amplify this for ourselves. We have to celebrate almost to an absurd extent how big these things are for ourselves, because we are moving closer towards this thing that we've been trying to push so far away from us for years and years and years. So even the smallest of things is really important and really big. And so did you ever have the fantasy of having an identical twin when you're growing up? And if you are a twin, I apologize if I'm super generalizing and making a fantasy of what it's like to have a twin. I'm sure it's very nuanced. Not all twins are this way, but You know what I mean? It's like you grow up and you wish that you had somebody like a clone of yourself or like a best friend, like your imaginary friend, like the person who you're so compatible with and you're just in together. You're like partners in crime. You're super tight and you just do everything together. That's what I dreamed of when I was a kid, because even though I have 2 younger sisters whom I love and who I'm very close to now, and we talk a lot. One is 5 years younger than me. The other one is 9 years younger than me. And when you are a kid, that's a bigger gap than it feels now. Now it feels like we're all on the same page. But back then, when you're 10 years old, hanging out with a 5-year-old doesn't have that best friend twin feeling that I crave. And I was sheltered, so I never had a best friend while growing up. I had a lot of imaginary friends. And it was because I just wanted somebody whom I could share my life with. And we could always giggle about the same things together. Somebody whom I could like bitch about stuff to, who would understand and be like, yeah, and cause trouble together and have these creative projects together and share these little things with them that we would both understand and we would both see the value in. And that's the feeling that I use when I'm writing in these Bibles, because it is like talking to somebody who is myself, but also somebody who is like also receiving my communication. So it's like, I get to come back and read it and be like, oh yeah, I did do that day. Because we easily forget. As adults, we're so wrapped up in these lives and what's happening. We easily forget the progress and the things that we are excited about for ourselves in the whirlwind of life. And so coming back to these, it's like, coming back to a time in my life when I'm just communicating with myself for the first time and really trying to focus on myself. And I just think it's really important to, instead of use it as just a diary where you're like, today I did this and this is what's going on, you write down, here's what I'm working on. And you celebrate the little things. Like, I woke up earlier today. My partner might have been feeling this way, but I did this differently. And even if it's something that you wish you would work on, like, oh, I didn't do as well as I wanted to today, you can share that with yourself in a way that is sharing with a friend instead of judging yourself, right? Because sometimes when we write in our journals in just a diary way, it's kind of like, oh, I can't stand myself. Why did I do this? It starts to be less of this best friend sharing energy and more of a self-judgment energy, which we're going through our lives doing that constantly anyway. Why do it more with ourselves? It has to be a place of support and guidance for ourselves to feel like we're being heard from ourselves. Okay, so this is one of my oldest ones. This is like over 10 years. Over 10 years ago. And this was when I was enmeshed in a relationship and I was just trying to find myself again. So I was like, I need a notebook. I needed to start taking notes on this and figuring this out and seeing myself. And so this date I wrote April 2nd. I've seriously re-noticed how much the organization of the apartment affects my mood, like a lot. Been feeling grumpy upon waking, upon seeing how nasty and messy it is. It feels good once I get outside or on the bus. So notice that I didn't just write down, oh my God, why am I such a slob? I'm making my life worse. I just wrote a note. I'm like, I've seriously re-noticed how much the organization of the apartment affects my mood. A lot. Right? So this is something that normally I would just forget, right? As soon as I left, I'd be like, whatever. I have so much more to do. But then I can come back to this and be like, oh yeah, I said that the organization of the apartment affects my mood a lot. So maybe I should start to organize a little more so I'll just have a better mood in the morning. So stuff like that, right? It's like, this is funny. April 23. Oh shit. I got to remember to return the library books today. I was like, note, I was also thinking of creating somewhat of a website / web presence and selling clothes accessories for like $10 each on eBay, but marketing them in a glamorous way. I don't think I ever did that, but it's interesting that I wanted to do that. So it's interesting to look at what I felt interested in doing. I always wanted to have something online. And then I have little pages like this where I write quotes. It says, fortune favors the bold. Do what you have always done and you'll get what you have always got. Sue Knight. Perhaps the most important mental and spiritual principle ever discovered is that you become what you think about most of the time. and that's by Brian Tracy. And I clipped that out of what looks like to be a newspaper. And I just have all these different quotes in here that I really felt inspired by. And then I made a list of rules for myself. It says, always give thanks first thing in the morning and throughout the day. Wow. Okay, so this is another thing about the Bibles, is that you can look back to see how far you've come and where you started off from, where your mindset was when you started. So these rules that I wrote for myself, right? The giving thanks thing sounds really nice, but then this thing where it says, be as thoughtful and helpful to everyone as possible, right? Brighten the day of everyone you meet. Okay, so there is a lot of things in here that are still me trying to get people to like me more. Very interesting, right? So that's another thing about these Bibles, is that you can look back at yourself and see your growth, because it's so easy to forget. I'm telling you, once you start getting off the hamster wheel and you start living more on your own terms and things start to change, it's going to feel difficult to remember what you were like just a mere couple months or year ago. It is really interesting how quickly we grow and change once we start to dedicate ourselves to this new way of being. So this is a way to look back and actually see, like, oh, wow, the thing that I was struggling with and the way that I was thinking a month ago, I no longer feel that way. I can't believe I was even thinking that way. So it's really cool to watch yourself grow. So again, the point of these is that this is you getting a chance to listen to you, to give yourself your own attention, and to show yourself that you care about the things that you find interesting and your own growth and the things that you want to believe about yourself. Okay? And this is a place where it only has to make sense to you, because we're so used to being graded on things that we put together. We're so used to thinking, how is this going to help anyone else? And it really is a practice to come back to having a thing that is just for ourselves. So I'm leafing through these different pages. This is just in a composition book, right? And this is like a bag that I had an idea to make. I think I kind of made a bag like that. And this one's just full of writing. This one is more like a collage. This one was when I was trying to figure out, what did I like to wear? What did I actually think was cool? What colors do I like? What fabrics would I think is interesting? What kind of style am I drawn to? This is when I realized I do like pops of color, but I also like the very understated minimalist thing. So how do I incorporate this into my life? And I remember these pictures here of these fabric swatches. I actually went into a fabric store and took these photos. And I was like, I think I like these. I'd want something like that. And I printed it out and put it in here just to make it super extra clear to myself what my eye was drawn to. So I can always be like, what was it that I was interested in? Oh yeah, that. I'm like, oh, I like those colors here. I like this boho look. This one, I remember this was such a big photo for me because it looked like she was in Los Angeles. This was back when I lived in Hawaii. And she just has this cool rock, carefree attitude, but she's also very simple. I don't know. It just had this energy that really represented my coolest self. So I put that in there. More collage stuff. Stuff that only makes sense to me. And notice how there's like a Chinese ship here. And then there's like this flowy thing here. And then there's someone sitting in a van here. This stuff only makes sense to me. And this is what I'm saying is so refreshing, is that you don't have to explain any of this to anyone else because it's for you only. And so when you are making these things and putting it together, you are not utilizing that habitual part of your brain that is saying, oh, but how is this going to help anyone else? How is this going to be of service to anyone else? Would anybody else understand? It doesn't matter because you're making something that is just for you to understand. And I remember when I was doing that, I could feel myself being like, does this even matter? Does this even make sense? And then being like, of course course, it's just for me. It doesn't have to make sense. It makes sense to me. And this is what matters. So I'm like, oh yeah. So it's so interesting to see how my brain had to really adjust to thinking just about myself, right? Just me focusing and centering in on stuff that I want to be thinking and feeling and focusing on. Look at all this stuff. There's so much stuff just stuck in here. So one thing that I noticed is that I'm one of those people where I love beautiful journals. I love blank books, the kind that you go to Barnes & Noble if you still have them near you. The beautiful journal with the little string in the middle, and it has gilded kind of pages and the beautiful cover, and it's hardcover and just smells great. I love the smell of books. But then you get it, okay, or I get it, and I never write in it because it's too perfect and beautiful. So I noticed that if I get just your basic ass composition book or something like a little Moleskine, I don't know how to pronounce that kind of book, where it doesn't matter as much and you can kind of tear it up and do whatever you want with it, that induces the freedom of creating and creativity and putting stuff anywhere, feeling more creative, of just doing what you want to do in your own way. So here I have a camper van interior that looks a lot like the one that I grew up in. I grew up with my dad, had this awesome 70s VW Volkswagen camper van, and then some chick in like this cool 70s boots and coat kind of thing, and then this luxe travel like Chanel quote in the middle. This quote that says, "I stopped feeling like I didn't belong anywhere and realized that I actually belonged anywhere I want to be." Right? So this is like inspirational stuff that really spoke to my soul. And the thing is, these things, this is not really who I feel like I am anymore, but this was on my journey. It was helping me guide me closer and closer and closer to who it is that I really am. And so even though you're going to outgrow different stages of yourself kind of quickly sometimes when you're finding yourself, here's Gandalf, who is one of my muses. And then I got some beautiful Hawaii things, camper van things here, quotes. I just think it's important to have something that you feel like you can make it your own and not worry about it being perfect, not worrying about if it makes sense to anyone, just for you. And it's so interesting because I had journals spanning back to when I was a teenager in high school. And when I looked back at these journals years later, I realized, oh my gosh, every single thing in this journal is about my boyfriend, is about whoever I was with at the time. And I would be just angry about him or crying over something or talking in love terms about him or just talking about what we're doing together and how everything was going with the relationship. And I remember looking at that and being like, wow, this is so interesting how my mindset is on these pages. Like the thing that I was most focused on is reflected in my journals. And I regret this so much, but when I was about to move to the mainland, to California, I threw away almost all of my old journals that were full of me crying about my boyfriend. And I wished I could have saved those because I was so embarrassed at the time. I was like, I never want to look at this again. But I wish I could have saved those so I could look back and just see the huge difference in how far I've come from the before and the after. Because I remember it was just all about him. And it was this drama, this roller coaster of like, oh my God, he said this today. It's amazing. The next day, oh, he said this. I can't stand him. It was just all this relationship drama. And that's where my head was at the time. And that's where my focus was at. And that's when I was one of the times when I was at the most identity lost place of my life. And I was just such a wreck and a needy, emotional person. And so once I started to create the Bibles that were catered to myself and my own guidance for myself, that helped me to finally redirect my focus just on me. And so these are vastly different types of writing and focus than my early journals. And so it is actually focusing in on your own self-interest instead of what someone else is doing. And like I said, with that older notebook where I had all these rules that were for me to please other people, that is something that I can see now in retrospect and be like, wow, that has slowly changed over time. With each Bible that came afterwards, there's less and less of that, oh, I want to be amazing for everyone else thing in there. And you start to notice these things when you look back, and you can see that you're making progress, because if not, it feels like you're unsure if you're actually making progress because you're yourself. So the day to day, you can't really compare yourself as it's happening. But when you have it marked down and you can look back, it feels so good to say, oh, wow, that's where I used to be. And now I'm here. So for this one, it even contains receipts that I kept. Why? Let's see what this is. Silk floral. Okay, so I went to Walmart and a craft store and bought things that were aligned with crafts that I wanted to do. So I wanted to celebrate that. So I stapled these in my book. So it's not just trash where I throw it away and say, okay, I just bought something for myself, whatever. I put the receipt in here and made it super important and great for myself. Okay, so in this book, which was a few years after my first one, I have new rules to live by. And this one says, you must not dilly-dally. You must be your word. You must have good intentions. You must not feel sorry for yourself. You must have a vision that you are striving for. You must tie creativity and experimentation with survival. You must be the change you want to see. You must stake your reputation on your better self. You must be comfortable with the consequences of being who you are. You must make time to enjoy things. You must study your mistakes. You must retry things that you don't like every once in a while. Okay, so this one, and I think this one, I don't think I wrote it myself. I think I found it online and I resonated with, so I printed it out. This one is noticeably less people-pleasy than all the rules I wrote for myself a few years earlier. So that's interesting to watch that evolution. This one in the back of this photo of Jimi Hendrix says, never apologize or make excuses for what you do. Take care of yourself first, no matter what. Right? Okay, so now you can see that my mindset is a little different now. This one says, go out once or twice a week at the most. Just because my boyfriend is out doesn't mean that you have to. And in fact, it'd be great not to. It's great to give him time to himself and his own social space. And so you both feel fulfilled and happy to get together after. Yes. Okay. So look at the advice I'm giving myself. These are reminders for myself. Okay. Whatever works for you. If you are not a journal person or a collage person or even a creative, hands-on, crafty kind of person, again, you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way that I did it for myself. And I do heavily use Pinterest now. I do write on my online journal now because it's easier for me to type it out than it is to handwrite it out. And my handwriting is sloppy, so I can actually read it if I type it out. Whenever I go on drives, I usually put my earbud in and turn on the recorder on my phone and I talk to myself. I say, hey, here's what I'm going through today. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'm working on. There's a lot of there's a lot of pauses. There's a lot of me having road rage and being like, what the hell is that person doing? Okay, anyway, what I was talking about. So this isn't to like make it perfect, but it's just me actually talking to myself and just getting myself to listen to myself so that in case I want to come back to it and say, oh, what was I thinking about on Tuesday? I can go back and listen to it. And I hardly ever actually go back and listen to the recordings, but just knowing that it's recording and that I am talking to myself makes me feel like I'm in conversation. It helps me get certain things out. It makes me feel like I have that best friend feeling where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go shopping now and I'll be right back. And then I come back and I press record again. I'm like, okay, so I got the groceries. I'm feeling good about this. I'm going to go do this. It is you being in a good relationship with yourself. And hey, from the outside, maybe people think it's crazy to literally talk to yourself. But you know what? It's been also said that it's a sign of intelligence. So whatever. The thing is that, does it help you? Does it make me feel like I'm cutting through all the noise and all the influence and the pleasing habits that come in from the outside world and help me to focus on myself and feel good about my own relationship with myself? Yes, it does. So the thing is, if you're walking around talking on your recorder, nobody knows that you're just talking to yourself. You look like you're on the phone. Nobody cares. So you can literally have a conversation with yourself while walking through a grocery store. And it is private and no one's going to know. So take advantage of the technology and all the things around us. Use whatever it is to focus and get more clear with yourself. That's the energy behind it. The best friend feeling, the feeling of sharing secrets, sharing hopes and dreams, sharing interests with yourself. Like in these, there's so many things in here that nobody else would get. Like I was going through this kind of caravan, bohemian lifestyle thing during this time. And I have quotes from that. I have ideas where you put feathers in your hair and lantern making or something like that. I don't know what was going on, but I was into that. And it didn't matter if anybody else understood it or thought that that was weird or something. And look, here's an even bigger picture of that same picture that was in my other journal. So this, like I printed this out twice. And so this thing, what did this girl represent for me? It's kind of like this carefree, simple, but rock star. I don't know. There's something in this that back then or through all those years I really liked. It's just interesting to watch these things pop up again and again where I'm showing myself, I like this vibe. I like that. Here's some sketches of some winged headpiece designs. It was a place for me to just really let myself be freewheeling and let myself think. So this is just something that I wanted to recommend to you as a big daily practice. You don't have to write in it every single day, but it's just good to keep it with you. That's why I noticed that I like the small ones because I could just put it in a bag. And if I ever felt frazzled or felt like, who am I again? I can open it up and look at it. And whatever works for you in your life. But the point is that even if we don't realize that we are ignoring ourselves or paying more attention to somebody else than ourselves, even if in the moment it doesn't feel like we are hurt by that, we ourselves know because we ourselves are people too. So how we treat ourselves, how much attention we put on ourselves, how much care we give to our interests, to the things that we say matter to us, right? How much do we actually pay attention to that? Because a thing in my journal where I said, I noticed it really affects my mood when the apartment is not organized. I would have normally just been like, whatever. And then I would have forgotten about it. But the fact that I wrote it down for myself to come back to later is proof to myself. It's me showing me that like, hey, your experience in your own life is important to me. So I'm going to write this down so you remember so we can do something in the future about this, right? It's being your own best friend. It's being your own buddy. It's being like, hey, we're in this together. Let's make this life better for ourselves. I'm going to give you little reminders. I'm going to make sure you have your organized checklist so you stay on task. I'm going to just let you vent to me and I won't judge you as being stupid or bad or something like that. I'll be like, yeah, I get it. And here's what we're going to do because of it. And we're going to celebrate the little wins together. And we're going to celebrate the things that you think are cool, even though nobody else understands. And we're going to grow along together and not be like, are you there yet? Are you perfect yet? Did you figure yourself out yet? We're just going to be excited with every little discovery and to be curious and interested, like how a best friend, like your fantasy identical co-twin as your partner in crime would. And that's what it is to have a good relationship with yourself and to have a good daily communication practice with yourself. Because this is about communicating and listening to yourself and showing yourself that you're important and giving yourself attention. That's all it is. And have it physically with you. Because I swear there's something about it that is so much more powerful than just keeping it all in your head. Because we think we're going to hold it in our heads, but then, like I said, we get so easily distracted that we forget. And like I said, when my journals were most about my partner, that was a time when I was the most moody, the most lost, the most version of myself that I did not like being. I could not stand myself. I was so out of control at that point in my life. I was so grasping onto him where I didn't even know what I was mad about half the time. I'd be seething mad and he'd say, what's wrong? I couldn't even tell him because I didn't even know. I was just like, I don't know. it was because I had no identity, no sense of self. I was not giving myself any attention. It was all about him and trying to get it from him. So when I started to write and keep track of and focus more on me and start to let go of the constant obsessing over what everyone else thinks, and I had a sacred place just to put my own brain, my own stuff, that's when things started to change, because there's something powerful about carrying a Bible about yourself, about your coolest self, about the person that you are becoming more of. Carrying that with you and referring back to it in like this religious way, the sacred way, where you're like, this is about me. This is my guidebook to myself. I don't believe that I am this person that I have become over all these years of partner pleasing and people pleasing. I don't believe that's my true self. My true self is a person who is inspired by these things that I'm writing about in these pages. The person who has my own back. The person that I celebrate my own wins and losses and love and life with. Me. This is me. That is something really cool to just keep with you and to treat it in such an important and loving way. So I hope this really inspired you. I hope this made you think about new ways in which you can communicate with yourself and create something very special for yourself. And maybe now I'll just look through and share a little bit more of what's in here so you have an idea. This is one of my coolest ones because, first of all, it's pocket-sized. And you can tell if you look at the video, this is dirty and beat up. And it's because I took it with me everywhere during this period of my life. Here's a Dove wrapper. So a Dove chocolate wrapper. And it says, life is about creating yourself. And then in big silver letters, it says, inspiration does exist, but it must find you working. So this whole page is kind of a whole cool thing where it says, pride and dedication. You build yourself over time. Every day is a dedication in creating your future self. Here in big words, it says, take care of yourself first, no matter what. Only then are you able to best help others and yourself. And then here's some pictures of these models with colorful clothing and colorful hair that I just came across online, and something about the energy of it really spoke to me. And this was before I dyed my hair completely purple. So it's interesting that I was drawn to these colorful hair girls. It was almost like I was showing myself like, look, you are liking this. Even though you're not going to dye your hair right this second, you like this. More cute birds. Apparently I was into keys. It's interesting. There's this thing that I wrote that says, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I know I'm a wonderful person and I don't need anyone to tell me so or otherwise. Yes. It's like, okay, I see myself trying to stand up for myself here. Like I said, when I was actually using these things, I would never want anyone to see it because I thought I was the only person who needed to do this. I thought it was a sign there was something wrong with me that I had to spend so much time working on this with myself. And now I think these are the coolest things ever. I think that they have so much cool wisdom in them. And they're so inspiring, and they really show me how much I was trying to work on my self-love and how much I was trying to give myself my own attention. And these things carried me through to a new version of myself. These things got me through it all. When things were hurting, when things felt rough, when I felt like I wanted to give in to all the bad habits, I would bust these out and I would look at that and feel better. This is you supporting you. Okay, do something for yourself that gives yourself your own attention today. It doesn't have to be starting this right away, but do something that shows yourself that you care about you. Even if it's just leaving little Post-it notes everywhere. Even if it's just putting a note in your phone, texting yourself on Facebook Messenger. I do that so much where I text myself little reminders. You got to use all the things to help you to listen to and communicate with and give attention to you. All right, everyone, have an self-attention filled week, and I will see you next time on the next episode. Bye.